My wife always had a passion for the sea. She worked as a lifeguard on a beach. I tried not to be jealous while I worked my office job. I believe she was a good woman. Our relationship was her first serious relationship that resulted in marriage. She told me she knew we were made for each other. What she failed to realize was that she was not nearly mature enough to be so committed to this idea of forever. She was longing for adventure without me, beyond her normal workday. She didn't come home when I expected one day. I called her once, at 30 minutes late, and again at 1 hour and 15 minutes late. I knew she was a grown, responsible woman, and I didn't want to be the harping father type of husband. When she did get home, she was acting very strange. It was in a way that seemed like she thought she was acting normal, but didn't realize I knew her better than she even did. She didn't see her own behavior in the mirror every day, and for that reason, I knew something happened today that didn't normally happen. I tried asking her what was wrong, or what happened today that delayed her. She acted like nothing different happened, but since she was late, she eventually said she stopped at the market to walk around during the sunset. I bought it for the night, and we went to bed. Nothing happened then, either, which was disappointing. In the morning, I woke up to her kneeling beside my side of the bed, sobbing into the sheets. The first thing she said was that she didn't mean to do it. She said she just wanted to do something fun and spontaneous, and it wasn't supposed to escalate the way it did. My heart started racing, and I felt like I'd been awake for hours. I asked her what she was talking about. She swallowed hard, started pulling her hair, and said she just started chatting with a man after he docked his boat. She was just walking, enjoying the sunset, and asked him about his boat. Their conversation continued until he invited her on the boat. It sounded fun, and he just seemed like a friendly person. She started sobbing again, and said she messed up. I asked if she cheated on me, and she could only nod. I jumped up and started packing my stuff. She kept crying, and found it hard to believe that I refused to give her a second chance, since she was being honest and telling me the truth. I told her she was being honest, about the fact that she didn't deserve me, and she was a sleazy girl for sleeping with some guy when she could have said no. I told her I wouldn't be the man to forgive her for wasting years of my life, and convincing me to believe she had self-control and dedication to me. That was all I said, even though she was trying to get me to say more for another 30 minutes while I got all my essentials. I knew if said anything else, it would only hurt me more. I went to my brother's house and filed for divorce. She started showing up once she figured out where I was staying, and did anything she could to get me to take her back. I wouldn't answer the door. Thankfully, my brother helped by dismissing her. I could have done it, but it's good to have supporters that help you do the harder thing, because it's the right thing to do for your future. I only told her one more thing. One day, when she tried contacting me, I told her she never should have gotten on the boat, and I refused to be made a fool for taking her back or thinking she wouldn't do this ever again. If I was the one to spend time with another woman alone, people would have easily said I was cheating on her. She left me alone, but couldn't stay in the house, so she moved in with someone else. Somehow, everyone she worked and socialized with found out she cheated on me, so gossip spread and everyone labeled her as someone to avoid. Her roommate was nearly cut off from society just for having her live there, so she kicked her out. I think she moved out of town or something, because why would anyone stay in a town where everyone knows you're a piece of crap? Since she left, my life's been going swimmingly. I started dating a woman that works at the library, and even though it's hard to live alone after years of having someone with me, I coped. Now my girlfriend sleeps over sometimes, and I look forward to that. We're adaptable to change, but there's never a reason to accept an unfaithful spouse. Your wife should have known better than to get in a stranger's boat. Maybe she got on his boat knowing she was going to sleep with him, so she felt like she wouldn't be misleading him or getting into a dangerous situation. It's always a better idea to leave a cheating spouse than to forgive them, because you just don't know the real reasoning behind why it happened. No matter what the reason is, they didn't have enough respect or discipline to maintain an honest and viable relationship. Everyone deserves to have someone genuinely love them without failing to take their dedication seriously. I am glad you followed through with leaving her and told her what she needed to hear. You're an example on how to handle such a situation. Surround yourself with people you trust and only maintain the attitude that you will make it through this unexpected life change. Thank you for sharing your story. Now let's get into our second story for today. My girlfriend and I had just moved in together for a year. I thought everything was great. We each went to our respective jobs and spent time together at home when we were off. She got home 4 hours before I did, and usually got changed, made dinner, did some cleaning and stuff around the house, and whatever leisure activity suited her mood. When I got back, she would update me on her day, and vice versa. These things didn't happen when I got home one night. I noticed she was still wearing her work clothes, only just starting on dinner, and looked worried that I was back already. I asked her what was going on, and she played dumb. I asked her if she just got home, because it was obvious. She said yes, reluctantly, and seemed to be trying in vain to come up with a reason why she'd be back so late. I pressured her, and she didn't like that. She snapped and said she didn't think it was fair for me to be questioning her like this. Then she threw out that she stopped at the store after work, and I did notice one grocery bag that she still hadn't unpacked. I looked inside, and it had a room temperature bag of shrimp in it. I asked if she planned on cooking them, since whatever she was keeping from me gave it enough time to thaw out. I continued pressuring her to tell me where she was after the store, but she refused and eventually settled for sleeping on the couch, so I would leave her alone. I brainstormed, but I couldn't think of what to do. I looked at her phone, but it was clean as a whistle, which made me second-guess myself. I was wrong for doing that, because it was obvious something was different. The next morning, after she already left, one of our neighbors came to me with something that would change the course of our lives. She said she had something upsetting to show me, but I needed to know. She showed me her Ring camera's recorded motions. It was my girlfriend in each clip, entering a neighbor's door adjacent to this lady's own front door. She looked happy in each clip, but the first one explained everything. She said she locked herself out of our apartment, but that was a lie. AP invited her inside, and she didn't come out until 45 minutes later, leaving with a huge smile, holding her keys. The next clips were similar, but each time took less introduction, and eventually none. I thanked this woman for showing me the evidence. I thanked her as genuinely as I could. She sent the clips to me. Funny that my girlfriend arrived home and parked the car right on time that day. She wasn't too happy to see me standing by the stairs, but it was nothing compared to how she was about to feel. I showed it to her, and she started stammering. She looked at me, back to the phone, back to me. She slowly suggested that he needed help moving some stuff around, and accepted her help cleaning. I laughed and suggested we go ask him. I grabbed her by the hand, and we walked up the stairs, but at the top, she started to pull away. I told her if she was seeing a man every day alone in his apartment, I should know him as well as she does. I knocked on his door, and as soon as he saw us, he slammed it shut. I let go of my girlfriend's hand like it was a snake. I called her a cheater and sped walked to my apartment to shut her out, locking the top lock as well. She screamed no and all the words guilty women say. She kept knocking on my door for a while. I eventually opened it, just a crack that the chain would allow, and slipped her from. I needed her to get off my doorstep sometime that night. At one point, I noticed she went to AP's house to knock on the door, but their exchange was quite short. Turns out, he had a girlfriend. She was eventually picked up, and some older man I never saw helped her load her stuff into his van. I found out later that it was a friend of her father's, who was looking to rent out his unfinished basement. It did not sound ideal, but my wife had no choice and no friends to take her in on such short notice, and under these shameful circumstances. When they asked why, and wanted to know what was going on, she tried to lie, but that only made the situation seem less severe. They gave her some advice, but mostly encouraged her to work things out with me. She eventually settled into the crappy bed she made for herself. One day, when I got home from work, I bumped into AP's girlfriend, on the way into his apartment. I asked her if that was her boyfriend's door, and she said yes, curiously. I said there was something she needed to know, and it grabbed her attention. She watched the videos of my girlfriend entering, and she was shocked. She banged on the door, and pushed him inside when he opened it, screaming at him and slamming the door behind her. So at least she knew the truth. I know these things happen, and I'm trying to keep my head up in good faith that I handled this the right way, and hopefully won't be hurt again. OP, your girlfriend proved her worthlessness as a lifelong partner by entering another man's apartment before you got home. She completely betrayed you, and didn't deserve to have a safe place to live with any man. I am so proud of you for taking each step you did, including asking her about being late coming home, even though you got home after her. After you had the proof, it's good you went down to her car to greet her and confront her infidelity. Once AP slammed the door, you didn't waste time talking to her, because she only would have tried to convince you to forgive her. There was no need to let her back in the apartment until the neutral party arrived to help remove her belongings. You certainly handled this well, and even told AP's girlfriend the truth. I respect you and wish you all the best going forward. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. I, 40 male, trusted my wife, 33 female, because she never gave me a reason to worry before. We were successful, in love, and had a great sex life. I didn't see an end to our relationship, and I never expected her to want anyone or anything else. If there was anything my wife was good at, it was communication. She talked to me all day, every day. Either through text or in person when we were off work. We had some hard conversations over our many years of marriage that resulted in us compromising and growing closer. I was a highly paid accountant for a company that everyone has heard of. We made plenty of money on my income alone, so my wife retired early and started specializing in property management, our house, and flea marketing. Our house and landscape was beautifully cared for by her. She picked what to plant outside, and never missed a day cleaning out the gutters. The one thing neither of us had any experience or skill in was mechanics. One month, my daily driver gave out. I had no idea what was wrong, so it was towed to the nearest repair shop. I started driving our backup car, only for it to die on me 3 minutes from home. That one was towed to the same mechanic as well. While I carpooled to work, my wife started communicating with the mechanic. She said it would be pretty expensive, but worth it to keep the cars instead of buying new ones. We weren't worried about money, so she told me it would be taken care of. I didn't think anything about it for months. Our cars were back and working just fine. A year and some months passed, and for all that time, she slept with me less and less frequently until it was non-existent. I tried a few times to ask her about it and tell her how much I missed it and needed it. She just said she was going through a lot that week, or she was going through a phase where she didn't need or have time for sex. When it didn't improve, I suggested she see her doctor, but she said she could get through it on her own, given enough time. So I backed off and gave her time, but I continued to love her any way I could. I prepared a romantic dinner for her and gave her a foot massage when I came home from work. I could tell she was uncomfortable with my doting and felt guilty. The next morning, I was at work when I got a family locator notification. It said my wife's phone was about to die, but it always said that. I accidentally clicked on the notification, and it brought me to my wife's current location. She was on the mechanic's property. I freaked out, and my mind started racing. I could only feel devastation, even though I didn't know what was going on yet. I went to my boss and told him what I discovered and that I felt it necessary to look into it. He let me go for the day. I pulled up behind my wife's empty car and walked towards the garage. When I rounded the corner, I could see that behind a pickup truck on a garage couch, my wife was having sex with our mechanic. I covered my mouth to stop myself from making any noise and pulled up my phone camera with a shaking hand. I took several pictures from under the truck, making sure my wife's face was identifiable. Then I sprang out and yelled at them. They jumped and started frantically dressing. My wife just repeated, "Oh my God," over and over again. Looking into my pleading eyes, my wife started telling me that he was just helping her, but it didn't mean anything beyond that, and it shouldn't take meaning from our marriage. All I could say was that he was supposed to work on cars, not my wife. My vision turned black around the edges, and I punched AP. He went down, out cold. I grabbed my wife's hand and drove her home to talk. Words can't express how betrayed I felt. We were in each other's light for more than 20 years. She was the one person in the world I could trust to be there for me with unconditional love like I gave her. At home, I asked her why I wasn't enough. She cried hard as she tried to explain that she was basically bored of our routine and so used to me that she would fantasize whenever we made love. Through tears, I told her to leave, but she refused and begged me to stay with her. I asked her why she never told me how she felt. I asked her why we couldn't have done something else, anything else to get back the spark. She just cried and said she messed up. She made the worst mistake of her life, and she needed my forgiveness. I asked her how many times they slept together. She couldn't look at me. She just sobbed. I figured it was a lot for over a year. I wouldn't forgive her for this. I showed her the pictures I took and told her to leave, this time more serious, with tears drying out my face. The woman in this picture was not my wife. My wife would never do that to me. I told her she could be this woman all she wanted now, because I accepted that my wife was gone. It was extremely hard to go through this, so I called my brother over. He was 10 years older, and it was great to have him there while my wife packed. He kept me distracted and thinking about possibilities. The pictures I snapped took away any chance my wife had at keeping the house or my money. She was forced to get a job so she could afford to live on her own, paying rent for a closet-sized apartment without a yard. I posted the pictures on the garage's Google reviews and his website. That was all it took for him to lose his customer base and reputation. None of his male customers trusted him to get close to their family or talk to their wives, with good reason. I've been dating another woman for 3 years now. She has children that look up to me as an example, and I love it every day. I got through the worst betrayal of my life and found a new wonderful reality I never would have experienced if not for going through a divorce. OP, I am so sorry to hear that your wife cheated on you with your mechanic. She never had to do that, but she chose to. You did the right thing by driving to the garage as soon as you saw her location. Not only did you catch her in her lies and cheating, but you also obtained proof. It's extremely fortunate you were able to prove what she did to you for the betterment of your post-divorce life. Spouses work together every day by trusting the other to remain honorable at all times, valuing the relationship. Your ex proved she couldn't do that for you, and she behaved in a way that no one should tolerate. I'm happy to hear that you have a wife and family in your life, there to love and cherish you the way you deserve. Chances are, going through life, you're bound to meet people that will hurt you, but there's also plenty of people that won't. Thank you for sharing with us. Let's now get into our second story for today. I was 23 when I let my wife, 22 female, move in with me. We were only dating for 6 months when she told me she was pregnant, so I immediately started preparing to become a family. I let her move in and convinced myself to be ready because this was a consequence of my actions. Well, it turned out she wasn't pregnant, but she was already added to my lease. I thought about how silly it would be for me to ask her to move back out just because it was too early in the relationship to live together. It was already happening, and I loved her at the time. I was nervous, though. Something told me I needed to stay on my toes and take extra care not to get her pregnant. I had conversations with her where I said I hoped to be married someday and wanted to be sure I could spend the rest of my life committed to her. I was expecting her to say something similar back to me, but instead she just agreed happily, like what I said was romantic, but she didn't understand the weight of it. I continued living with her and loving her, growing closer and closer to her, even though she never really told me she was looking to commit herself to someone for the rest of her life. I just figured that's what people did. They dated or lived together until they decided to get married because no one else could be a better match. After living together for 3 years, we got married. My wife didn't have any friends of her own, so she got to know mine over the years. I didn't mind because she was a very caring girl who deserved to have friends. She also became really good friends with Andrew's sister Jenny. They started going out together, and it was a huge relief for my wife. With girl time ticked off her list of needs, she had more love and energy to give me. Ironically, it was right around this time that I started to have faith in our marriage. One day, I had 2 of my friends over to play cards while my wife was out with Jenny. Andrew couldn't make it for game night because he had a college class to go to. 2 hours into the evening, I still hadn't heard anything from my wife. She usually sent me a text to let me know how things were going. I was about to text Jenny to ask her how things were going, but she texted me first. She said she had something important to tell me and wanted to know when was a good time to call. I was confused and worried, so I called her. The first truth was that my wife never planned to meet with Jenny that night. The second truth was that Jenny got home and accidentally heard Andrew and my wife having sex in his room. She didn't know it was my wife until she saw her sneak out of the house minutes prior. Just then, while I was still on the phone with Jenny, my wife walked in the house. I dropped the phone and yelled for her to get out. I started hyperventilating, so my friends jumped up and asked what was going on. My wife looked like she just killed someone. Her eyes were huge, filled with tears, and she wanted to help me, but she knew she couldn't. She knew she was the one that did this to me. Of course she mounsed sorry to me, but all I could do was tell her to leave and get out. I couldn't look at her, so one of my friends sat with me, and the other helped her focus on packing some stuff and leaving. He pressured her to leave, and it was a huge weight off my shoulders. While she packed, I told them it was Andrew she slept with, and they couldn't believe it. The 4 of us had been friends since middle school, and my wife just ripped us apart. I wanted to commit myself to the right woman, and here was my wife going behind my back to sleep with a good friend of mine. I finally trusted her and decided to marry her, only for her to make my worst fear a reality. My friends helped me get revenge on Andrew by throwing a few dozen eggs into his room through an open window. He was no longer invited to our card games. My wife and I did have a few phone calls after this, but they all ended with me hanging up on her. She confessed she developed feelings for Andrew after getting to know him for a while, and when she told him how she felt, he reciprocated her feelings. They were snapping pics back and forth for at least a year. To persuade me to forgive her, she told me she regretted cheating on me immediately after it happened. My thought process is that my wife could have stopped talking to Andrew at any time. As soon as she realized she was developing feelings for him, or even before that, she should have put a stop to it. There was a woman that tried to befriend me over Facebook for months while I was married. As soon as I gave in and told her we could be friends, she immediately started flirting with me. I blocked her, and I told my wife about it. She thanked me for letting her know, without admitting what was happening with AP. I am so thankful we never conceived. 2 months after our divorce, she became pregnant with Andrew. They got married and his parents paid for the down payment on their house. It was never meant to last, though. They got a divorce after the child was born with a completely different skin color. She tried to get child support from AP, but he had run off. OP, only an extremely careless and immature woman, lies and sleeps with her husband's friend behind his back. Unfortunately, she has a lot of growing up to do, now with a child of her own. It's a shame how dumbed down and sexualized things have become. Even shows or apps that minors watch and use have subliminal messages or absolutely no moral value at all. It takes an exceptionally wise person to see through these temptations and decide to place value in themselves and the decisions they make. Choose carefully what your eyes, ears, and mind absorb, and always remember you are the only one that can control your thoughts, emotions, and tongue. Life is far more exciting with a little restraint, wisdom, and respect for the people you love. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there's a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Hey there folks, welcome to my channel Relationship Haven. In today's story, OP found out the hard way that his wife cheated on him a while back with a school principal after the shocking things he found on her phone while they were on a trip to Vegas. Let's get into the story. 6 months after discovering wife's 31 female affair partner. TLDR, if you don't want to read the entire post, wife had emotional affair for a year and a half. Working things out. I hurt and go backwards. We keep trying. Working so far. Good sex. This post was originally removed for asking a moral question of if I should tell his wife and how. It has been 5 months and I'm writing with an update of sorts. Back in February, my wife and I enjoyed a trip to Vegas gifted by my mother-in-law. Mother-in-law joined and brought some friends. All was well. One of the nights we were with my wife, mother-in-law and her friends decided they were going to go to a club and a hotel and us guys were going to go play craps. I got tired and decided to head back to the room. I showered and patiently waited for my wife to return to the room after receiving some detailed texts about what she wanted to do to me that night. She arrived stumbling and clearly way too drunk for any kind of activity. So I undressed her and got her into bed. I plugged her phone in and was about to go to bed when her phone started blowing up from one of the friends. I answered her phone and they informed me she had left her credit card at the bar. I thanked her for telling me and ended the call. I swiped up as I usually do to close the app one I'm using and her phone displayed a text conversation that wasn't in the regular iMessage app but Telegram. It caught my eye and I thought it was strange. I opened it and discovered it was a text between her and one of her colleagues. For context, back in July of 2021 we moved states 3 hours away as my wife kept asking me to get a transfer with my job. Finally a transfer was granted and we moved from our old town to a new state. My wife was a principal of an elementary school there and the male colleague texting her is still a principal there. There were photos shared of her in her sexy outfit she wore that night. Him telling her how hot she looked in the last message was "Love you baby." I didn't know what to do. I went to her photos and saw she had shared many photos with him, very intimate photos. I saved all the photos and sent them to my Google Drive account. I saved all the texts and sent screenshots to my account as well. I then went on to Facebook Messenger to see what else she had been up to. I saw that one of her ex-boyfriends was expressing how much he missed her and how he should have married her, not me. She is so perfect blah blah blah. He said crap like you're thicker than a Snicker in all the right places and send me a picture for masturbation purposes and science. She didn't engage much in that conversation but didn't cut it off either. I screenshotted that and saved it as well. I then went and deleted all the screenshots from the recently deleted photos folder, making sure she did not know I screenshotted all these things. I stayed up all night pacing as she slept drunk. I had his phone number from her phone. I saved it and screenshotted it in a Telegram app to prove it is his number in the messages. I found his address. I found his wife's name and her phone number. I found her on social media. I was ready to blow this all up, but I didn't. I love my wife and I decided to let her explain herself before I blasted them to his wife. I packed my bags and was ready to change my ticket and fly out. But again, I love my wife and this would have caused her great embarrassment if I were to be gone early in the trip, leaving her to explain to her mom and her friends where I was and what happened. So again I stayed put. I also knew that if I left there would be no room for reconciliation. By this time it was about 6 or 7 a.m. I took her phone and went downstairs to the little coffee shop and breakfast place in the hotel. I just helped myself through all of her stuff. I checked the phone statement on my phone and found out how long this had been going on. Just over a year. The first texts came through in December of 2020 and then they stopped in December of 2021. But clearly they continued talking through the app until February of 2022. All the vacations, dates, and fun little things we did together, I could only assume she was texting him with me right next to her. I bought her a coffee, an orange juice, a Red Bull, and a bottle of water so she could sober up when she woke up because we weren't going anywhere. I went back to the room and plugged her phone in. I had everything. I had the idea to log into the Telegram app they were using to talk on my phone's web browser so I could see all the messages between them. I sat on the bed next to her, sad, angry, heartbroken, and just in disbelief. Finally at about 11 o'clock she started stirring. She told me to come lay with her, but I just went and sat next to her. She immediately knew something was wrong when I got into bed with her. I guess she could just feel it. She immediately jumped up and turned to me and asked me what was wrong before I had even said a word. All I said was, "Who's Greg?" She immediately got defensive and sighed. She asked why I would go through her phone like that. I told her what had happened and I wasn't snooping through her phone. I explained that someone called and I saw it. She jumped up and grabbed her phone and went to the bathroom. I opened the app and saw she had sent him a message. I left the app open last night. Opie saw it. Then she deleted it. She deleted all of the messages. So they disappeared in my web browser as well, but I already had them saved. He replied with, "Oh no crap, am I in trouble?" I couldn't help but laugh. This guy is 41 years old, a principal, asking if he was in trouble. I found it funny that he did not give a crap to ask how she was. He wasn't worried if I was angry. He wasn't worried if she was okay. She came out of the bathroom and I showed her my phone and said, "You're really going to go text him right now?" She started crying and I began asking all of the questions I wanted answered. Questions I knew the answers to. Some questions I did not. I asked if she screwed him. I asked how long it had been going on. I asked if he had ever been in my bed or in my home. I asked if she loved him. The answer to these questions was no, no, no. I wanted to go to his house. I wanted to burn it down. I wanted to do physical harm to him, but I have a precious daughter and a very good job that requires a security clearance. I finally lost the urge to confront him or hurt him, but I still have the urge to let his wife know. The problem is my wife does not want me to. She says because of embarrassment, shame, guilt, but I wonder if it is that or me finding out something she didn't tell me or lied to me about. Who knows, but I want AP's wife to know. She deserves to know. I wanted to post his and her phone numbers here that night, but I thought they might get me banned as well as into some civil trouble. We have very close friends there. Some of our friends' kids still visit us in our new state and our new home. Some friends are still principals there and work in the school system in the small town. The affair partner's wife does as well, so there are small circles that intersect. Recently, going back through the cell phone records, I remembered that we had attended a marriage conference in February of 2021. Sure enough, there's his number on the same dates as the conference. He actually attended the same marriage conference with his wife. It just got worse, it seemed. I also saw that she talked with him on the phone on her birthday, August of 2021, while I was arranging a surprise party. She was on the phone for 45 minutes. I practically had to drag her to dinner that night with about 40 people waiting to surprise her. When she saw all the people, she cried and told me she loved me so much that night. I had no idea. I went through my phone and deleted every picture from December 2020 to February 2022 that was intimate of us, hugging or kissing, or some sexy photos she had sent me, or photos of us together on some random trip we had taken. I couldn't delete the pictures of my daughter at the same time, but they make me sad knowing what I know now, that she was likely talking to him and coming home to me. Update from the first post and removal. She removed the lock from her phone. She has given me full access to her phone. I told her I want couples therapy. I want her to go to individual therapy. She refused couples therapy, but went to individual therapy. I asked again for couples therapy and she refused again. I finally told her she does not get to dictate how this goes. She goes to couples therapy or she leaves. I told her I would not move out. She could move out. My daughter stays with me as I will be in the house and she needs to stay in her environment that she knows. She was livid. Said that I would kick her out and keep our daughter from her. I said I would never keep her from her mom, but I would have full custody and she could see every other weekend. She finally agreed. She cried. She apologized. She explained most of it to me, but it's only been 5 months and I keep getting questions in my head and ask them. She gets so upset when I bring it up. I told her again, I'm sorry that my grief is inconvenient to her happiness. I told her she does not get to just move on like she wants to. She just thinks if we don't talk about it, it will disappear and we will be fine. I started going to the gym. I am looking better. She has noticed other women starting to give me attention. Good-looking, fit women. She admits she made a huge mistake and she messed up so badly. She is working on fixing things. So far, I believe her. The sex has been great. She pleasures me a few times a week apart from the sex 5 to 6 times a week. I still get distant from her occasionally. I still get sad. I still get depressed, but we are working through it. I still want to tell the wife, but I don't want to risk the progress we have made this far. My therapist asked if that would make my situation any better and what would the repercussions be. So here we are. I guess just letting you guys know it's possible. I see so many posts. How do I move on? What do I do? Is it possible? It is, but it still sucks. I still wonder. I logged into the Telegram account recently and saw he either blocked her or deleted his account. So there is that. 1 foot at a time. Hey OP, props to you for staying strong in such a difficult situation. I can only imagine how painful it would be to find out that your wife cheated on you with a school principal. I see that you're trying to reconcile with her by going through counseling, but I personally would cut ties with her and let karma serve its justice. I would definitely recommend telling the affair partner's wife and even reporting it to the school so he can hopefully get fired. Then I would recommend serving your wife with divorce papers and fighting to get full custody of your daughter. Reason being is that your wife decided to cheat on you and in return has completely disrupted your family. Ultimately, she deserves to pay the consequences for her actions. Let's see what the comments had to say about the situation. My issues and stuff said, tell the wife, period. You absolutely would want to know, right? She supposedly stopped and I get you're trying to get your hardest to keep it together, but she is clearly not. Sorry you're dealing with this, but it sounds like you're just rug sweeping and love bombing. Again, wouldn't you want to know? Or are you just fine with being complicit in her affair? Happy Tragedy 15 said, these are the posts I always comment on here. Please tell the wife. This is coming from a wife who was cheated on and didn't find out until 12 years later. Finding out so long after absolutely destroyed me and I'm still not recovered. I thought we had a great marriage. Now I don't know if it was all a facade. I question every aspect of the life we shared now and I have lost the ability to trust. That happens to everyone who is cheated on, but it is even deeper than that because I didn't know he was capable of looking me in the eyes and lying so easily to me for so long. He made me realize that you can think you know someone better than anyone, but in reality you can never really know them if they can lie so easily. Whiskey Tango 7734 said, if you decide to stay with your wife and that it is the best for you and your family, at the very least go see a family lawyer in your new state. Be sure to ask if postnuptial arrangements are valid in your state. If they are, then make your wife sign one if she wants to stay. If she isn't willing to do that, then she expects to do it again. Make sure you control the money going forward. Ensure you have everything you need if you need to cut her out of your life. If she stays and remains true to you, great, but if not, then you have what you will need. Good luck. Thanks for taking the time to listen to today's story. Don't forget to like and subscribe, as well as comment on what your thoughts are about today's story. Hope you have a great rest of your day. My wife and I were married for 8 years by the time all this happened. She was the 4th grade math teacher at the local middle school. The principal of the school worked with her for 9 years and they were good friends. I always trusted them and believed their relationship was strictly professional. My wife was a teacher for so long I never expected her to do anything to jeopardize her career. Maybe she didn't think anyone would ever find out what she was doing, but that's a stupid thing to believe. She forgot her phone one day while she was at work and I found it in the couch cushions. Although I didn't expect to find anything interesting at all, I started snooping through her phone. I found messages from the principal to her. That wouldn't have been very weird, but I only scrolled a little bit before the conversation took a naughty turn. She'd sent him a picture showing things that were only meant for my eyes. The picture was after he asked her if she was feeling hot for him. The part that broke my heart the most was when he mentioned how wonderful her body felt. The principal was a married man, which made it even more appalling. Their messages went back for a long time. I couldn't even determine when their message chain started. There was a lot of steamy talk that pissed me off so badly. I had enough reading and decided to call Mrs. Principal. She was really confused to hear from me, but I explained I was the husband of the 4th grade teacher at the school where her husband is the principal. She wanted to know why I was calling. This was the hard part. I stuttered and tried to find the words, but I eventually told her I found messages on my wife's phone from her husband. Then I added that the messages implied they had sexual relations. She gasped and started choking on her words while she asked me questions. Eventually I just told her I would send her screenshots of the proof and her phone number. After she read through a lot of them, she told me she was going to call the vice principal and local superintendent. I braced myself. My wife was going to be in serious trouble. In one day she lost her career and husband. I felt bad for her and me, but I only felt bad for her because I cared about her deeply for a long time up to this point. Who knows how long she hid this from me? I know I certainly didn't deserve it. I remembered my mom convinced me to do a prenup before my wife and I got married, and now I was relieved. It just ensured I would get to keep the house. As soon as I thought about this, I got the first panic text from my wife. She said something weird was happening and she needed to call me in a few minutes. I didn't reply, but it took her 45 minutes to call me. She was crying and I could hear people talking in the background. She said she was called into the meeting room and fired for having too close of a relationship with the principal. I didn't respond too quickly because she wasn't being completely honest with me. I just asked if the principal was fired too, and she said yes. I asked her what kind of relationship they had and she went silent. She finally asked me if I found her phone. After I said yes, lots of silence followed. That's when I was done playing dumb and told her I found all the messages between the two of them and that she needed to move out of the house today because it belongs to me. I told her that this was all her fault, she did this to us, and now she would have to live out the consequences in her life. She sobbed and told me she was so sorry, among other promises, and anything she could say to try to keep me on the phone. She thought she could use the hook she had in my heart to convince me to stay. She was wrong. I was my own support and nirvana. I didn't need her to function or have a good life. I was not afraid of facing the challenge she hit me with. I didn't need to save her from suffering from the pain either. I had these thoughts as she was rambling over the phone. I told her to shut up and that she needed to come pack up her stuff. I also warned her that if anything was left behind when I got back, it was mine and she wouldn't be allowed back in. I had really inspiring and supportive conversations with my friend at his house while my wife's world crumbled around her. Her and the principal were homeless and jobless now. His wife kicked him out of the house immediately and he got fired from his job. The whole town knew about their affair, so they instantly gained a reputation as being homewreckers. Last I heard of them is that they both had to move out of state to avoid the aftermath of the disaster they had created. Not a day goes by where I reconsider my decision to leave my ex. The first few nights were hard, but I just absorbed my mind in the things I enjoy the most. My hobby is building model trains and miniature scenery. It is extremely fun and time-consuming. Before I realized it, I had become a sought-after bachelor in town and started dating. I'm still taking things slowly to heal mentally from what I've been through, but since the incident happened, I have experienced some casual relationships with women in my area. Overall, things have turned out pretty great, and I want people to know that leaving a cheating spouse is not as scary as it seems. Wow, OP. I am so sorry you had to experience the surprise betrayal of your wife of 8 years. No one should have to experience this. It is a shame that it happens relatively often in today's world. It's no secret that families are intended to be permanent and survive all trials and temptations together. Your wife was tempted by something that could only benefit her, so I believe you made a reasonable decision to start over. Your story offers hope to our viewers, and I thank you for sharing. I wish you all the best. Now for today's second story. This actually happened to me, and it makes me believe karma is real. I married my wife when I was 24 and she was 28. She had a boyfriend that was in prison for 5 years by the time we got married. For obvious reasons, I assumed that they were broken up without any chance of ever seeing each other again. She didn't tell me that they'd been writing each other letters and talking on the phone every week since he was locked up. She also never told me that he was scheduled to be released on her second wedding anniversary. I know she knew about it because she made up an excuse to leave the house alone that night. She went so far as to fake a phone call with her mom claiming they needed help to move something heavy. I was a fool for believing her without question. I let her go that night without knowing that she was his ride to where he was staying. She was gone for an hour and a half, which just felt way too long to be helping her parents move something at their house 5 minutes away. I called her just as she walked in the door. She looked very pleased and amused. I asked her how it went, and it took her a few seconds to remember what excuse she gave me. She finally said, "Oh yeah, it went great. It wasn't really that heavy. I think they just wanted to see me." I asked what they talked about, and she just looked at me like that was a weird question. I stared at her expectantly, like it shouldn't be hard for her to answer if she was telling me the truth. She started sweating and stammering. She made up something, but her improv wasn't convincing. Then she went off to bed, giving me a lame excuse on our anniversary night. I hate to say it, but her sneaking away went on for another 3 months. She acted so happy while she was at home. It made me think everything was great between us. We even had wonderful sex, which bothers me a lot now that I know what was going on behind my back. Everything started falling apart when she told me she was pregnant. I didn't believe it was possible because almost every time we had sex she made me use a condom. Funny, she was making her husband use a condom while she had unprotected sex with her felon boyfriend. Now I believe she wanted to get pregnant by him so she could leave me for him and guarantee that he would stay with her. Well, her plan backfired. As soon as it was possible, I had a DNA test done on the child. She tried to resist the idea at the doctor's office, but quickly realized that made it look like she was hiding something. The DNA test came back, and surprise, I was not the father. Now get this, she had the nerve to tell me that DNA tests can be wrong. So while we waited for the second test results, I made her stay at her parents' house. She absolutely hated this. I think she hated it because she tried to move in with her baby daddy and he wouldn't let her. Her parents didn't know anything was up yet, but they wouldn't be in the dark for much longer. I knew she wasn't just going to stop visiting her secret lover, so it was time to follow her. I sat in my running car down the street from her parents' house in 0-degree weather. She got in her car around 9:45 p.m. I followed her at a distance but relied heavily on the family location app she forgot she had on her phone. She went inside a house with loud music blasting from it. I don't know how many people were in there, but after 8 minutes I felt brave enough and determined enough to sneak up to the windows. I peeked in and saw several people mingling around. I found a bedroom, but I couldn't see very well through the window. I swore I could hear my wife, but the music was so loud that I couldn't be sure or record it. I went back to the car and waited until she came outside 39 minutes later. I snapped a picture of him saying goodbye to her, but it was really poor quality. I thought it was really sad that he was obviously just using her and she wasn't welcome to stay much longer than what was necessary. I filed for divorce before the test results came. When her parents saw their pregnant daughter being served divorce papers at their door, they started shitting bricks. My wife was kicked out shortly after that. Her cries and attempts to explain why this was happening just didn't make sense to her parents. They knew she must have had a secret lover who would take her in if she had nowhere else to go. They were right. After they kicked her out, she was picked up immediately by her felon baby daddy. I watched her social media during and shortly after our divorce, and whenever she posted pictures of the baby or her and her baby daddy, the house looked absolutely filthy. She stayed there until their baby was 3 weeks old. That's when she walked in on him having sex with another woman. My ex absolutely broke down at that point. She stopped caring for the baby and was taken to a mental health facility to recover. The felon baby daddy wasn't that great at caring for a child on his own, so the baby was taken into Child Protective Services shortly after that. It's been 1 year since all of this happened, and my ex is still in the meadows. When she was first admitted, she would try to call me at least once a day and leave a voicemail full of apologies and tears. Sometimes I answered, but our conversations were so awkward and empty. There was no way she was going to win me back at this point. She had destroyed the life and trust we built together. Eventually she stopped calling me, and all I know is that she hasn't been released yet. I have yet to begin dating again. I feel so relieved to have gotten a chance to recover from the emotional destruction she caused me. I'm building a relationship with myself. I didn't realize it until after I was single again, but I was living each day hating things about myself. That's what I started working on after I left my wife. Self-improvement and self-acceptance. I'm the only one that's going to be there for me through everything I encounter in life. I'm grateful for my dad and the few friends I have in this world. They helped me through the hard times and abrupt changes. OP, your story is quite shocking. I read a lot of these stories, but I'm always surprised when a wife manages to hide a secret relationship from her husband. I'm so sorry you had to endure the emotional torment that accompanies marital betrayal. Your wife made a terrible and selfish decision to have an affair with a felon. Clearly her life was much better while she was married to you. I feel like her decision to stoop so low is a reflection of how she sees herself. Unworthy and seeking approval from anyone. I am happy to hear how you handled it and hope that people going through a similar situation stay strong and follow your example. Stay strong, OP. Thank you all for the support and for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also comment below with your thoughts on what happened. I, 37 male, met my wife, 33 female, 12 years ago at a cafe in the city. I remember the day vividly. She was sitting at a table drinking a cup of warm tea and reading a book while she was wearing this adorable little dress and a sweater. Right away, I thought she was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. I was never really much of a ladies' man, so it took a little while for me to work up the nerve to talk to her, but when I did, we hit it off right away. We dated for 3 years, and we've been married for 9. She and I have gone through a lot together, but in the end, we've both always known that we had each other. After we got married, we wanted to try to have a baby and start our family. Now, we have one beautiful daughter. It really felt like we were the perfect happy family. She and I both work full-time, we have good jobs with good benefits and a solid security blanket. I knew she wanted to quit her job and stay home with our daughter full-time, but that wasn't practical for us unless we wanted to make a lot of major cutbacks in her lifestyle. After the pandemic, her job started this healthy lifestyle reward system. The idea was to get the employees who had been more sedentary when they were working from home back up and being active by rewarding them with gift cards, movie tickets, etc. My wife was actually pretty excited about it. She hadn't been quite stressed out, and she wanted to start taking a yoga or Pilates class, something like that, so she could try to de-stress while she was being active. It was the perfect time to do it, so she enrolled in a yoga class at a local studio. She started out by going once or twice a week just so she could get a hang of how it works. Every time she came back she was exhausted, but she would tell me that she could already feel how she was less stressed out. As time went on, she was taking more classes at the studio. Twice a week turned into every other day, which turned into almost every day. She was enjoying herself, so I didn't really think much about it. She had even told me about friends she made at the studio. It seemed like her social life was thriving, she was happy, and she was confident. Everything seemed fine. One day, she came to me and told me that she was changing her class schedule to take something in the evening instead of in the morning. It worked out better for her, so I didn't think much of it at the time. Her morning classes usually lasted an hour. She returned home about an hour and a half after leaving. The evening classes took a lot longer. I wasn't immediately suspicious that something was going on, but after a couple of weeks I started to wonder. I pulled her aside one day and asked her why she was always coming home so late, and she told me that the class was more intensive, so it lasted a bit longer. She explained that with this class they begin with a meditation, then go into more elaborate poses, and then after class she and a lot of the other students would hang around and chat for a bit. She was so sure about everything she was saying that I had no reason to doubt it. I'd never had a reason not to trust her before, so my worries were soothed. It wasn't long after that conversation that I was at work one day when I got a text message from my wife. Attached was a picture of her standing in front of our bedroom mirror naked. She and I had never really sent each other pictures like that, especially not while I was at work. It was something that I'd heard other couples have done to spice things up a bit. What really caught my eye with the entire message was the text attached. In the message she said that she couldn't stop thinking about the night before. I was confused. We hadn't done anything the night before. I didn't know what she was talking about. She replied back very quickly, telling me that she had sent the text by mistake. She made a joke about how voice-to-text didn't capture what she said properly. She tried to clarify it by saying she couldn't wait for tonight. I honestly didn't buy what she was saying. I thought right away that she had sent me the entire message by mistake. I knew it was meant for someone else. I spent the rest of the day at work anxious and worried that something was wrong. When I got home, my wife was instantly telling me that she had a headache, felt dehydrated, and had been vomiting. I thought it was interesting timing. I had an old friend from high school who used to work as a cop, but they changed their career to work as a private investigator. I reached out to him and explained my situation, and he said that he'd be happy to help. I played it cool while he was looking into what was going on. I didn't want to raise any suspicion to give my wife the upper hand in continuing her lies. About a week after he started, we met for lunch at a restaurant in town where he showed me the evidence. I had been right to suspect there was something going on. I was honestly shocked to find out that it was with her yoga instructor. In hindsight, she only referred to the instructor as the instructor. She never used any pronouns like he or she. Maybe I was in the wrong, but I assumed it was a woman. On top of that, I had voiced my concerns to her about her late-night classes, and she lied to me with such ease. He showed me evidence in the form of pictures, videos, and messages he was somehow able to get his hands on. I had a full collection of documents for their infidelity. Divorce was the only option for us. I would not be giving her a choice in the matter. We wouldn't be going to therapy, and we wouldn't even be having a discussion about it. I went back home, trying to think of the best way to go about all of it. I was angry, and I was beyond hurt by her. I wanted to get even for what happened. She had a Christmas party for work coming up, so I figured I could use that opportunity to embarrass her. After all, it was her work health benefits program that sparked all of this. I had everything ready to go to serve her with the divorce papers, so when we left later that day, I mentally prepared myself for what I was getting into. As with every work Christmas party I went to, my wife walked around the room and said hello to people while I joined the few people that I was familiar with. After a few minutes though, I went around the room and introduced myself as my wife's ex-husband. I enjoyed seeing the little wrinkle in their eyebrows when I introduced myself that way. I could tell that they were all curious about why I was there. One of her coworkers said that she had no idea we ended things. I've had to tell her that my wife didn't either. She was very confused, but I watched her spread what I said to everyone else there. Everybody in the room was gossiping about my wife. They probably thought I was crazy too, but I didn't care. Toward the end of the evening, her boss got everyone's attention and made a toast. When she was done, I chimed in on the tail end and made my announcement. My wife stared at me with her jaw hanging on the ground when I told her about how I found out about her affair. Everyone else in the room was a little tipsy and very intrigued by what I was saying. They would be talking about that Christmas party for years. Honestly, I wouldn't blame my wife for quitting. I told my wife that it was over, gave her the papers, and drove home without her. As far as the instructor goes, I called the studio that he worked for and they have a strict policy about employees being involved with clients. He was fired from the studio. My wife and I went through with the divorce. Because she cheated, things were not favorable to her. We have joint custody of our daughter and I got to keep the house. She's staying with her sister while she figures out where she's going to be living. OP, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. You had your doubts about what was going on, and she was able to lie to you without any guilt. What she said about the yoga class was very convincing. I don't blame you one bit for believing what she said. especially if you had no reason not to trust her before. The text message was definitely meant for the instructor. She realized her mistake right away and tried to fix it so you would think nothing was going on. It's good that you had a friend that was able to help you out and get the evidence you needed to come out on top in the divorce. I imagine working at the same place where you told everyone about the affair is going to be quite difficult for her. I'd be interested to know how uncomfortable staff meetings are with her present. Anyway, I hope you were able to recover from this, and I wish you the best of luck moving forward. Now let's move on to our next story. I, 25 male, met my wife, 24 female, in high school. We were friends during the first few years. I always had a crush on her and asked her to prom during our senior year, and we've been together ever since. We ended up getting married about 6 months after graduation because she got pregnant. That's not to say that we didn't love each other. She was my best friend. The person who meant the most to me in the entire world. We just had to rush things along a little bit. We both come from a small conservative town and people talk. We thought it was the best option for us. She has always been close with her family, closer than I was with mine. Sometimes I thought it was strange, but the more I was welcomed into it I was a little jealous. Her family shared things and everyone was genuinely happy to be around each other. Her mom had remarried shortly before we got together, so she had a new stepfather and stepbrother and sister. We moved out into our own apartment and started living our life. She got a job helping at the library in town and I started working at my dad's construction company. Everything was going very well for us. Her mom helped with the baby a lot. We enjoyed a simple life with good friends and a loving family. For years later not much had changed, but my father told me he was retiring and I would be in control of his construction company. With this promotion came a huge increase in pay. We were going to be able to buy a house and start saving up for college. I was ecstatic. However, the workload was surprisingly much more than I thought it would be. I was used to working for 10-hour days, but with my new responsibilities I was working 5 to 6 days a week and averaging about 70 total hours. I could feel the strain it was putting on my marriage, but I figured it was the best way to make sure our kids had everything they needed. Things went on like that for a while. All the while when I was at work she would be home or with her family. I didn't expect anything was going on. Even having suspicions about it seemed wrong. But here I am writing this post. During the spring and summer work always gets incredibly busy, so I'm around at home less and less. Recently I'd noticed that my wife's stepbrother was coming around more often to hang out while I was out. It seemed perfectly normal. He was with his stepsister and nephew. I had no reason to suspect anything else was happening. He called her and texted her. They would chat on Snapchat all the time. Things that I interpreted as normal activity. One night I was off work and my wife and I were alone watching a movie. I ran to the kitchen to get us some popcorn and I saw her phone on the table. I didn't immediately decide that I was going to go through it. I picked it up planning on just bringing it to her because she left it there. When I hovered over the screen I saw that she had a message from her stepbrother asking for her to think of an excuse to go to his house. I thought it was weird. My mind didn't immediately go to the reality of what was happening. While the popcorn was still in the microwave I did a quick look to see what the context of the message was. They were both exchanging suggestive messages about wanting to be together again. He even said how he'd had a thing for her since before their parents got married. My wife agreed and said that it was unfortunate they never had a chance to explore what they had. I scrolled further back and saw messages and videos they'd shared with each other. I felt sick to my stomach. I actually thought I might collapse on the ground and vomit. No, they're not blood related, but they're still family. It was disgusting to me. On top of that, she'd been hanging out with him in her home with our child. My mind ran through countless different scenarios of what could have happened. Right away I confronted my wife. We had a huge blow-on argument which resulted in her storming out, no doubt going to her stepbrother. I began looking into divorce the following morning. I considered my options about what to say to her family too. She came back late the next day and we had a discussion. I was still very angry. Our child was home and awake, so I didn't want to upset him. She begged me not to tell anyone about it, saying it would destroy her family. She tried to convince me it was a momentary lapse in judgment, but I wouldn't listen. I told her I wouldn't tell her family, but I knew that was a lie. She betrayed my trust, so I was going to get back at her. A few months had passed and she and I ended everything. I moved out and we were still in the midst of figuring out custody. I had no idea what she was telling her family about our separation, but I told mine the truth. I picked my son up from her house and he told me all about a huge family barbecue they were having the following weekend. It was the perfect time for me to come clean. Nobody had any idea I would even be going to the event. I just showed up uninvited. Everyone was curious about why I was there. I definitely didn't feel welcome, so I figured I'd make my point and then leave. I joined a group of people at a table including her mom, stepdad and stepbrother, and I told them everything I knew. Her stepbrother looked like he wanted to leap over the table and strangle me, but instead he denied my claims and called me a liar. I think everyone around us knew that his impassioned denial was too defensive to not be at least a little bit true. Her mom pulled me aside and asked me how I knew. I could tell it broke her heart and I felt bad about being the one to tell her, but she needed to know. I ended up leaving the barbecue with my son for the rest of the weekend. Apparently neither of them is welcome at any other family gatherings, and most of her family thinks they're disgusting for what they did. OP. I can't believe you had to go through something like that. It's hard to imagine your partner betraying you to begin with, but even more difficult when it involves someone so close to the family, or in this case technically in the family. Your wife and her stepbrother not only betrayed your trust but could have potentially hurt their parents' relationship as well. It was a selfish, foolish thing to have done, and they both deserve to be called out for it. It is also disturbing that your wife had her affair partner around your child so much. I think you were right to worry about what was happening while you weren't around. Hopefully you and your son are able to carry on after the divorce and continue living a stable life. I wish you nothing but the best. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me.